welcome to this week's Caregiver Question of the Week. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that provokes a lot of anxiety for certain caregivers of folks with dementia, and that is, how do you get someone to stay in their clothes when they're always wanting to get naked? Like I said, as you can imagine, people in this position, caregivers of folks with dementia in this position, often have a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety about someone taking their clothes off at an inappropriate or inopportune moment. So I'm going to be sharing a couple of tips to help keep people in their clothes when they are supposed to be in them. But first, my name's Amelia. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm also the owner and founder of Higher Standards Caregiver Training, as well as the very proud co-founder of WCN University. That's Whole Care Network University, which is a great resource site for family caregivers. Also, this is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for health or medical advice, and it's not a substitute for a therapeutic relationship. So if you hear anything that makes you think that you need any of that, then please make sure to reach out to your individual healthcare provider or the healthcare provider of the person that you care for. All right, let's talk about this. So first off, we have to think about why someone might want to take off their clothes, and also understand that a person with dementia who is undressing themselves when it's inappropriate to undress themselves is probably in a state where they don't know that it's inappropriate, right? So we can tell them all we want, you got to keep your clothes on, we're out at the doctor, or you got to keep your clothes on, we're at your best friend's daughter's niece's wedding, whatever it is. But that information is probably not going to be super helpful because they're already in a state of mind or a state of confusion where they are not recognizing that it's inappropriate. So we have to kind of dig into what the experience that person is having. And so this kind of leads into the first tip that I want to share with you. The sensation of touch is really, really important for folks with dementia. So one of the things that we can do to help keep people in their clothing is to make sure that their clothing feels good. We want to make sure it feels nice and soft, that there aren't any scratchy tags or anything pokey on there, that nothing's too tight or pinching or pulling or anything like that. Because if they feel comfortable, if their clothes aren't causing any discomfort, then they're going to be a lot less likely to take those clothes off. So that's really one of the number one things, is make sure that there's not anything about the clothing that is causing discomfort. Making sure, again, that things aren't too tight, that nothing is scratchy, that they're not sitting on their pants or something else in an uncomfortable way. And of course, making sure beyond the clothing that maybe there isn't an underlying need that needs to be met. Maybe they are wet or soiled or something like that, and they're trying to move or change for that reason. So, and of course, also making sure that the temperature is appropriate, that they're not too hot or too cold, all of those kinds of things. So really, the main takeaway for that one is making sure that clothing feels really soft and nice and comfortable against the skin, so that they're less tempted to try to remove it in order to get rid of that source of discomfort. That's number one. Number two, sometimes, of course, tip number one isn't always a perfect solution. Sometimes people do just want to take their clothes off. And there are times when we really need them to not take those clothes off, like at, someone's sister's, niece's, best friend's wedding, whatever it is. So what can you do in that situation? Well, there is adaptive clothing out there that is specifically made to make it more difficult for someone with dementia to take their clothes off. So, for example, a blouse that fastens in the back that would be difficult for someone to remove on their own. So you can get adaptive clothing that will also help with this issue. But what I want to kind of add on to that as a caveat is we want to make sure that any clothing someone has, any clothing that they might be trying to get on or off or out of, we need to make sure that they're not going to become entangled or entrapped in that clothing if they are trying to get it off. So, adaptive equipment or adaptive clothing can actually be a really fantastic solution for this problem, especially in certain contexts where you really need someone to stay in their clothes. But we want to make sure ultimately that someone is going to be safe, that they're not going to become entangled or entrapped in any clothing that they're trying to get off. And of course, that can sometimes apply to regular clothing too. If someone is trying to pull a button-up shirt off over their head or something like that, they could get tangled up in that as well. So, just a note that we want to make sure that there's no risk of someone getting entangled or entrapped in any kind of clothing if we are trying to adapt clothing or purchasing adaptive clothing to help keep them inside those clothes. All right, so that's what I have for today for this week's Caregiver Question of the Week. If you have a care question, please feel free to submit it. You can submit it totally anonymously using the form provided along with this post. You don't have to share your name, you don't have to share your email, you don't have to share anything, honestly, except your question so that I can answer it for you. And if I'm not the right person to answer it, then I will reach out and find the expert who is and bring them on to Caregiver Question of the Week. All right, guys, until next time, please stay healthy, stay well, and most of all, take care. Bye.